The big question is always, how do you engage in efficient time management? And this is where you can spend so much time. The 80-20 rule applies in life. You're going to spend 80% of your time on 20% of your portfolio. We just want to make sure that 80% of your time is on the right part of your portfolio. Doesn't matter that the 80-20 rule applies as long as it's worthwhile for you. So we're just going to propose something now to help you, give you the structure of this is where I should focus my time. So here's a listing of the loans in your portfolio that I want you to prioritize in the following order. Anything that is a vacant house is a priority because it's a potential danger. Somebody could be squatting in it. The roof could cave in at this time of the year because snow accumulated and nobody was shoveling the snow. Vandals break in. Big question you should be asking yourself is, well, how do I know if it's vacant? The answer is, you don't. You have to go out and find it. You're going to call a realtor. You're going to have somebody drive by. You're going to call up a neighbor. You're going to order a door knock service to go out there. But you have to figure out which properties are vacant and which ones aren't. You need to determine the occupancy type of your properties. Even if it's in second position, those are priorities for you. Because seconds that are vacant, when we get into seconds, you're going to see that it almost doesn't matter what the house is worth. But these are dangers where we risk the value of our house dropping significantly. The other top priority is that example that Donna came up with, that are the listeds. If a house is listed for sale, now how do you find that out? Google. But you want to find out the real source for is a property listed comes from two different sources. Number one, if it's a regular real estate company, they will list it on the multiple listing service, the local online website that all real estate agents have access to that says 123 Main Street is listed for sale, here are all the details. And you have to be a real estate agent to get access to that. So you have to call a local realtor. The other source is some people do what are called FSBOs, for sale by owner. Some people will not sell it on the multiple listing service, but they will put a sign in their front door. You ever seen those? It says, call John, Jerry McGuire Real Estate, Inc., 431-7308. That is just as viable a way to sell, and you will not know that if you just have your local realtor pull off of the MLS. So you want a drive-by that lets you know that this house, and that's part of your vacant search, is actually listed. Google is an attempt to find out, is it on the MLS or is it for sale by owner? But Google is an imperfect search engine. Just because it doesn't show up in Google does not mean the house is not listed. So your two sources have to be the MLS through a local licensed agent and then through a drive-by. And those are your priorities. And the reason why these are your top priority is that this happens. We're in an imperfect world. Borrowers listed their house for sale. We buy their loan, and they had a buyer. And they came by on Friday. And they said, here's an offer. I love the place. This offer is valid for 5 days, $250,000, all cash offer. Here you go. And they don't even know that you exist. They don't even know Parktree's phone number. So they don't know who to call to get authorization to get that loan closed out, which to you could be payday. So you want to reach out immediately to anything that's listed. I think once you get this priority list down, you'll realize that there are certain things that you may want to do on an ongoing basis to see, does something bounce from one rank to the next. Second is a first mortgage with a tax sale date that has been set, or a redemption date that has been set. And I'm going to ask Susie to give us an example of why these are top priorities. Susie and I were in Denver, Colorado, the day before a conference that we were having. And Susie comes up to me and she says, "We may have a problem."
We almost lost the house.
So explain what happened.
Counties will sell their tax liens at what's called a tax sale. So it's kind of like a foreclosure sale, but you buy the tax lien for a certain set amount, and if it's not paid by a certain date, well, in this state it's actually a tax deed, right? It's what they call it in Iowa. And if it wasn't paid, I think there's a 3-year period. If it wasn't paid by a certain date, then that person who bought the tax deed for maybe $2,000 was the new owner of the home.
How did we find out in Denver that we had a problem?
Borrower calls me and says, this guy just showed up at my house. It says I have 3 days to get out. It's like, what are you talking about? So
because we owned which mortgage, the first or the second?
The first, and we had done some research on it, and missed that the redemption date was quickly coming upon us, and we failed to get, because the loan had been assigned and our assignment hadn't been recorded, the county sent the redemption notice to the previous owner, so we never got it and had no idea that it was coming up. And there was nothing we could do, except we were able to, because the borrower was in bankruptcy, we were able to work around it, and we actually did not lose the collateral, but it really reiterated.
Had we not been able to intervene, what would have happened?
We would have 100% lost any ability to foreclose on the property and lost our entire investment.
Which was, I think, around $40,000. Gone. Completely and utterly. It's not like the house burns down and we have insurance. We're gone. Toast. If you let that happen to you, count your days. What this reiterates, and we'll go through in the foreclosure example, is to just highlight that there's one thing that's always going to be ahead of us, no matter what mortgage we buy, and that's county taxes. And, taxes, local taxes. If you're in Pennsylvania, there are 3 tax types. There is county taxes, city taxes, and school taxes. So you need to make sure when we're boarding a loan, when you get a loan, first thing, and I think we're pretty close to having a set of boarding instructions for you and to-dos, is what do I need to check? And taxes is the most important, because this sets the deadline that we would like to set, except this sets the deadline for us. So we don't want to, and Susie and I both missed this. It was by the skin of our teeth we got out of that one. But you don't want to have this notice given to you by your borrower that suddenly says, bye-bye, you guys are gone. So this is going to be a priority. Now, you're going to ask me, so where's the flag that says, I got a tax deal set on my loans? It ain't there. You've got to do the due diligence yourself. So what this means is, for these 2 priorities, you have to figure out how to identify if your property's vacant or not. We're telling you processes to, steps you can take to figure that out, but you're going to have to order it yourself on your loans. Listed, same thing. And then for this, it's a simple phone call to usually, at most, 2-3 different phone numbers that are listed in, most of the time, in red, to the tax collector and the tax assessor. And you have a certain script that you use, and we went through this tax script, right?
I'm working as a team and as a group. As you are doing research in the states that we have loans in, if we create a document in Google in Google Docs that we update, check taxes in state and county and city for this particular place. This is the information I found, where we work together as a team to gather that information so we can have a completed document or up-to-date document as a unified front versus, because that'll be a lot of research for one individual to do, but if, as we're making those calls and checking taxes, then we just have an ongoing document that we update.
Priority 3. Seconds. You're going to notice that the next, I believe, 3 priorities are all second mortgages. That may sound counterintuitive, but what you are, if you don't have taxes ahead of you that are going to sale, and you don't have a vacant property, and you have a non-performing first mortgage, you have time on your side. You are in control of the timeline. So there ain't no fire going. Nobody's setting a deadline to you, to us. These have a deadline ahead of them. So notice, if you're a first mortgage and the tax sale date has been set, it's actually the exact same thing as we own a second. You're managing a second mortgage, and the first is in foreclosure and has a sale date set. It's the exact same situation, except instead of we're now first and second mortgage. Those are your next priority. Why? What can happen if the first forecloses? Remember our example. Here was that first mortgage for $400. Here's the second mortgage for $150. Here's the third mortgage for $400. If the first mortgage forecloses, there is the potential that the second can get wiped out in a foreclosure sale. If there is a risk that you can get wiped out completely, you'll want to spend time on that loan. Even if it's to determine and to review with Sabrina, I got this thing, it's set for 15 days from now, what do I do? I don't quite know these numbers. She'll sit down with you. 4th priority. Same thing, but there's no sale date set. Still high on the priority list because that first is in foreclosure. In almost all cases, information comes from a single source. I want you to always question the source of information, no matter what you've been taught, no matter what you've learned. Information stems from one location. What is the one location that this actually stems from? What starts a foreclosure? Foreclosure is the act of, let me just back up for those who don't know. I'm an attorney, or I'm a trustee company, and I fill in notice of default, and I send it to a borrower. Or motion to file foreclosure, and I send it to the borrower. Okay? That's what initiates a foreclosure. In almost all states, this same document gets recorded, county recorder's office. The equivalent of what's the source for, if we don't know who the foreclosing attorney is, the source for the information is not the credit bureau. Credit bureau reports on information that is provided to it. It's the recording at the county recorder's office. So be careful. Why? Because this very question just came up. Donna, tell us about the credit report on this borrower the other day. What did it say?
It said that my first was in foreclosure on the credit report.
Right on the credit report it says foreclosure on a first mortgage. Was it in foreclosure? No. We went to the county recorder's office. Nothing at the county recorder's office. Deb, you worked in that city. What did you consider a loan in foreclosure?
Typically, 120 days would be considered, foreclosure status.
So do you see, and she worked at a bank, do you see if you called Deb and you said, hey Deb, I'm calling about this loan. Oh, it's 180 past due. It's in foreclosure. Can you imagine those words slipping out of her mouth? Yeah, and yet it's not in foreclosure. And yet the Bureau's picking it up that it's in foreclosure and it's not even in foreclosure. So be very careful with data Information is key in our business. I will always press you to get your data right. What's your source? How do you know it's vacant? Expect that kind of a question. How do you know it's listed? Where'd you get that data from? It's all about data. Where's the source for your information, and is it credible and accurate? Because if you start taking actions and you start running down one exit strategy, assuming something, that first is in foreclosure, and it doesn't happen to be, guess what you've done? You've made a priority something that maybe didn't need to be.
What Deb said is, at 120, it would go to the foreclosure department if it was mortgage secured. So that's where you may get some misinformation. Well, it's gone to the foreclosure department, but if it went to the foreclosure department today, it might be typically 6 months before I ever look at that file, other than sending a settlement letter out on that, because that was how heavy my caseload was. So you also have to take that in consideration when you inquire if you're talking to a financial institution, whom you're talking to. Is it in foreclosure, or is it in the foreclosure department? Has it been sent out to an attorney? Start asking fact-finding questions, not that it's just 120 days and it's in foreclosure, because you would be surprised at just because it's in the foreclosure department doesn't mean the foreclosure has been initiated, unless the first mortgage has a larger balance where that loan might have been charged off sooner than 120. The bank has an option to charge it off earlier, and sometimes they will take the hit now if they're a deadbeat. If their first payment default at 60 days, they might go ahead and roll it. I know.
It was complicated.
But
the point, the important point, if the rest of the charge off and do we take the write off or the hit or not, may or may not be understandable right now for you, but this is really what Sabrina was pointing at, is your fact finding is to find out how much time is there. Not is it in foreclosure or not, but I'm trying to figure out, when is my deadline? Is it 270 days away because I'm in Pennsylvania and the foreclosure just started? Oh, I got all the time in the world. Versus, I got 15 days. That sale is set 15 days from now. If we're going to try to settle with this borrower and save this loan and make some money off of it, it's going to be now, because I don't have too much time. So that's the distinction there. These are any seconds where we have a risk of a deadline is upcoming, because the first is intending to foreclose and a deadline has already been set. And now we bump back to first. Our fifth priority is all first mortgages that are more than 90 days delinquent. The delinquency is key. Why do you want to focus on delinquent loans? Because those are the problems. Those are the ones we're not making money on. Sixth is anything between 30 and 90. All other seconds and all other firsts. Really, it's the top 5 categories. You know, what are the 5? You're going to be in the top 5 range most of the time. And this is just helping you to prioritize between them.